Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with another transfer talk, but a bit of a special show for you today. There's been a few deals between Aston Villa and Everton over the last couple of weeks, so I thought I would get the man in the know on all things Everton and possibly the host of my favourite non-Villa related YouTube channel. It is Mike from the Blue Boys Network, so let's get him in straight away. Good evening to you, Mike. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on, Rich. Obviously, really appreciate it, and your kind comments toward the podcast and all that stuff. And yeah, we've got plenty to talk about tonight, haven't we? Plenty of dodgy dealings, exciting dealings. We've got the lot, mate. We've got the lot. And obviously, for you guys, you can hear that I am a Brummie as well. So there's a bit of a story behind why I'm an Evertonian. But yeah, Rich. Cheers. Thanks for having me on. And, mate, fire away wherever you want to start. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, why don't we start there? A Brummie Everton fan. Let's go there. What's the story then, Mike?
Yeah, so you know, these things happen, don't they? But yeah, so my dad is essentially a Scouser. You know, he was born in Wales, moved to Liverpool when he was like 1. Spent his whole sort of working life in Liverpool until about the mid-80s, watched Everton be successful and all of that. And then about 88, 89, he moved down to Birmingham, met my mum. The magic happened and here I am. So, you know, it's one of these afflictions that they pass down to you, unfortunately. And, you know, he's in the fortunate position. He's watched Everton win titles, European trophies, multiple FA Cups, blah, 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 blah. And I've seen us do nothing. Brilliant.
Well, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. I mean, we were chatting on DM to set up the show, and I mentioned that I live in Newcastle because you thought we might be able to do the show face to face, but unfortunately it'd be a long trek. So my son is an actual Geordie and he's an Aston Villa supporter, so similar situation. He's older, he's going to go through that, going to school. Everyone's going to be a Geordie. Well, he does now, going to school. Everyone's a Geordie, everyone's a Newcastle fan, but he's sticking to Aston Villa. Unfortunately, we never ever beat Newcastle, so he's just
yeah, one of your bogey teams, isn't there? One of your bogey teams.
Yeah. But yeah, like you say, mate, once your dad supports the team, you go with it, don't you? Many times. So fair play, mate. Fair play. And Aston Villa and Everton have got, you know, kind of similar type of clubs. Got a you know, I have a lot of respect for Everton, a lot of respect for Everton supporters. Always love going to Goodison Park, and the last few weeks has been, you know, a couple of transfer dealings that I guess we've helped each other out in a couple of ways. We'll move on to, we'll talk about the Lewis Dobbin and Tim Iroegbunam deal in a bit, but the the Amadou Onana deal, I nearly got his name wrong there. He's like that. 50 million it could go to, but before we talk about what he's like as a player, he's been linked with Barcelona, he's been linked with Arsenal, he's been linked with Manchester United. Obviously, very, very highly rated player, 22 years of age. I mean, well, how surprised were you that it turned out to be, you know, Aston Villa that are the club that have secured his signature?
To be honest, which I wasn't surprised at all. And there's a few reasons for that, because he's got a fantastic agent who has peddled his name around to multiple clubs for a very long time, actually. It's about 18 months. He's been at Everton for about 2.5 years. And pretty much from the outset, he was using Everton to essentially get in the Premier League and use it as a platform to expand his career, which, look, ordinarily, I don't have an issue with that. Amadou Onana is an enigma because if he's meant to be a direct replacement for Douglas Luiz, then it is a significant downgrade. And that's, I'm not meaning to say that, because Douglas Luiz, in my opinion, is probably probably was one of the most underrated midfielders in the league. Everyone knows he's very good, and he's still underrated. That's how proper he was as a footballer. His composure, his ability to beat a man. You don't get any of that with Onana. What you get with Onana is a player that is very headstrong, will put a tackle in. He's got them, 6'5" or whatever he is, so he can get down on the deck and he can put a sliding tackle in. But his distribution's poor. His ability on the ball to make a 5-yard pass, if he's facing the wrong way, he can't quite compose the view of the pitch. Now, he's 22 years old. I'm sure he's going to get all of that. And I'm not just saying this player is a poor player, because he looks fantastic at times for Belgium. So he's clearly got it. He's clearly got the quality. But I must say, from an Everton fan's perspective, we're not missing him. There's a stat going round or something about his last 13 or 14 starts, and it was something like Everton only won 4 of those games. But when you throw in another one of our midfielders who started over Onana, we won 9 of those 13 games or something silly like that. So he's definitely a Hollywood player. He'll G up every crowd he physically can, and you'll get a little bit bored of it at times, because you'll lose 3-0, but he'll be running into the crowd and fist pumping and be like celebrating, and you're like, mate, now is not the time to be doing that. But yeah, look, he's a player that £50 million in today's money, I think, as of right now, I think it's possibly a slight overpayment. However, I did think the same of Anthony Gordon for 40 million, and I was proven wrong. So I hope that he comes good, because he's always had the right mentality, and I'll never doubt him or fault him for that. And he's going to a football club that I hugely respect. He's going to a football club that you mentioned, which have got a strong pedigree in European competition, in league competition, in cups. This is an Aston Villa side that 8 years ago were relegated from the Premier League and are now playing Champions League football. So look at the distance you have travelled in the same time that Everton got took over by Alisher Usmanov and Farhad Moshiri, who were owners of Arsenal or co-owners of Arsenal. They've sent Everton towards relegation. Fortunate enough, we've probably just about staved it off, touch wood. But with you guys, you've gone down, you've come up, and you've been brilliant. So I hope he works out. I hope it's a good move for you, and I hope he can add something to that midfield. But I don't think he's better than what you've got, and I don't quite know how he fits in that team. But you'll be able to probably tell me better than I can, to be fair to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things really, because Douglas Luiz, from a Villa fan's perspective, and certainly from mine and other people on the podcast perspective, yeah, he was a fantastic player at times for Aston Villa, and that first half of last season he was probably up there with the best midfielders in the league. But there were other times over his 5 years at Aston Villa where he completely flattered to deceive, in my opinion. There was times where you knew there was more in Douglas Luiz that he wasn't giving, or he's being a bit too casual on the ball, or certain games where you needed him a more physical presence, which is not really his game. We'd get overrun in midfield, and we've been crying out for, I'm not saying that Amadou Onana's this type of player specifically, but we've been crying out for height and physicality and athleticism in our midfield. And to have a player at 6'5" in now, who I guess we thought Leander Dendoncker might be able to provide a bit of physical prowess, but he just hasn't got the mobility at all. And so he was a failed player in that sort of sense. Luiz is a great playmaker. Kamara is a good, reader of the game, ball winner, but again, physically can't always compete. McGinn, we know what McGinn's like, combative, but passing quality and sometimes, you know, not really that defensive midfield and more kind of driving forward. So in a sense, Onana gives us that ability, and I guess in both boxes he can be a threat as well. Now, one of the things I've noticed that he didn't do necessarily too much for you guys is score for his height, you know, score goals from corners. So I'd hope to maybe he might want to improve on that area, or Emery might look to improve him on that area. But in terms of where he fits in, that physical, tall, rangy, box to box, can cover distance and link up with Yuri Tillemans as well. You know, obviously they played very well in that first half in one of the games in the Euros. He can maybe rekindle some of that partnership. So that's where I see him potentially coming into the side. But yeah, I mean, you give a really good account. And as I say, there's probably elements of what Douglas Luiz was like to Villa supporters in terms of, we knew there was more in him. We knew there was a phenomenal player there, but sometimes didn't quite deliver. That you have that sense in Onana as well.
Yeah, Onana is one of these players that I have no doubt is capable. It was almost like he was at Everton at the wrong time. You know, the time where we kind of didn't need his attributes. We sort of needed. I mean, I hope he's the player that you want him to be, but I do have a few concerns around some of the things. Like, for example, you've said about combative. Onana has a massive tendency to go missing. Yeah. So you hope that he doesn't. The fact that, you know, you can look at Twitter now, for example, and you'll see that the Everton fan base is probably, I mean, I'm just throwing numbers out, but it's probably more 60-40 in favour of him going. And when the toss-up was between Jared Branthwaite or Amadou Onana, there literally was no contest. We would rather keep Branthwaite. Onana is replaceable. The one thing I would say is he's got a manager at Aston Villa that will get the absolute best out of him and will make him the best player he can physically be. Well, you know,
otherwise he won't play. If he doesn't do what Emery wants him to do. Because there was times with Luiz where you could see Emery shouting at him almost to get more out of him. And I think that was the situation with Luiz. Like, he was one of our top players, and Emery said that. But when you're looking at, we had to lose one of the big names because of this PSR ruling and everything like that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, you talk about Emi Martinez is probably a wanted player. Ollie Watkins, I'm sure, is a wanted player. You could get, you know, 50, 60, 70 million for one of those players. We probably did sell Douglas Luiz for probably less than his market value. But in that fact that we were prepared to sell him tells you what you need to know about what Unai Emery wanted in his midfield, or what he thought he could get out of him. So you're right in what you're saying. He's got a coach who will demand what he wants out of him.
Yeah, and that can only be a positive for his development, because he is still 22 years old. But yeah, you'll see it very quickly. You'll be able to make your own sort of assessment, and you'll you know, he'll probably have a fantastic first 10 games of the season and ride that out until about January, February, and then everyone will start going, where is Onana fitting in here? What's his actual position? Because as much as you've said, you know, defensive, combative midfielder, I think he's a better 8 rather than a 6. He's definitely got the attributes to turn on a pivot, pick up a ball and spray a ball 30, 40 yards in between the cross lines between the fullback and the centre half. He couldn't do that at Everton, because that's not the way that Everton play under Dyche, which, let's be honest, no one wants to play the football that Dyche plays. So I get why the opportunity at Aston Villa was attractive, and I do get why it's Aston Villa that signed him, because Aston Villa now, pinch yourself, you're a Champions League football team. You know, with a Champions League manager, with a manager that knows to win, you know, with a squad of players that, in my opinion, is definitely a top 4 side, and actually now needs to go and cement that and keep pushing onwards. So Onana's a good project. It's an exciting time to be a Villa fan. You've already signed as well, by the way. You've signed some great players already. Like, this window must be really exciting to be a Villa fan. So you've just got to keep it going, boys. You've just got to keep it going.
Mate, you're getting me up for it already. So that's a good sign. Just in terms of that, where you mentioned about kind of replaceable in midfield for you guys, Onana. So what's your plans, or what do you think Dyche's plans are with the midfield moving on with it without him?
Yeah, so I have a funny feeling that Dyche will probably go for a 6 and 2/8. So I think you'll find the Ghana guy, bless him, 35 years old. I think he'll sit in the 6 role. He did tremendous last season. He was an absolute breath of fresh air, and he kept Onana out the team. To be fair to him, so I mean, for some, mate, he was the signing of the season that year. He was phenomenal. So I think you'll see that, and I think you'll see the 2/8s. And we've also, we have bought in that area as well. Tim, whether Tim's a starter for a Premier League team yet, I don't quite know. I haven't seen enough of him. Yeah. But he'll certainly add something on the bench at the worst case. And then on top of that, we've got players like James Garner, who's a good footballer. We've got
I like him.
Players that can probably do a job at the level that Everton are at. We're not pushing for Europe. We're not going to be playing Champions League or Europa League anytime soon, but we are going to be aiming for between 10th and about 14th. And I think Everton's squad is more than capable of getting there, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned Tim Irigbonem. I think, good player for me. Like you said, I don't know how much he'll feature in that first team, but I think he deserves a shot. He's played a few games for Aston Villa last season. I thought he probably should have been given more of a chance, if I'm honest. And he's actually quite a good carrier of the ball. Maybe needs to demand it a bit more. Maybe needs to take a few more risks. But that comes as you get more games and that more experience. Sometimes you want to play the safe passes when you're just getting into a first team. So maybe giving some games and giving specific role by a Sean Dyche type manager might be quite good for him. Just win the ball and give it and carry it when you've got space and kind of keep it quite simple, which I think will do him good. But yeah, he's a good player. What surprised me was us taking Lewis Dobbin. Now I know there might have been some PSR, little agreements in there, but were you slightly surprised that we signed Lewis Dobbin? And are you kind of do you see it as a bit of a shame that you let the young lad, local lad go?
Yeah, Lewis Dobbin is an interesting one, really, because he's a player that it was sort of his breakthrough season last season. He scored 1 goal in 20 games. Tricky, quick winger. Got the ability to beat a man, get a shot off, or stand across up. And he's a good player. He scores a good goal against Chelsea last season, which if you watch it, it's from the edge of the box. He hits it first time like a half volley. It's lovely, guided finish, bottom corner. So he's clearly a capable footballer. And the whole thing around PSR, if I'm being honest, can I swear on this channel?
Of course you can, mate.
Yeah, it really pissed me off because it was £10 million for a player that people were moaning that it was £10 million, but I actually valued higher. I actually value him higher than £10 million. So, it was frustrating really to hear people saying, "Oh, you're selling Dobbin for £10 million," and yet, you've got Chelsea signing players for like 30, 40 million quid who have never played a game. I think the lad went to Newcastle from Chelsea, 30 million quid, and you sit there and you think, you can't tell me that Lewis Dobbin in today's money is not worth at least £15 million. But he went for 10, fair enough, no issues. But he's definitely a player that if Emery nurtures like I think you can nurture, you're definitely going to have a good player on your hands. You're definitely going to have a player that will be a Premier League player, could play Premier League now, probably play your Carabao Cup games, and you'll get off your feet to watch him. And I find these deals a little bit weird anyway, because if I'm not mistaken, are they both on a 3-year contract?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very similar structure of
and I think both clubs have first dibs on both players. So it's kind of like it really wouldn't surprise me if there's unfinished business with both of these players at some point for these clubs. I mean, and we're seeing it more with Villa because they're being sensible. They did the same with Jadon Philogene, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But he's another one where you've sort of sold him for PSR purposes. Let him go and do what he's got to do at Hull. Prove he's a capable footballer. He's gone and done that because loads of clubs wanted him, and you've gone and bought him back on a really nominal fee because you obviously had that first dibs 20% buyback clause. So, to be honest, from an Everton perspective with Dobbin, it's a shame, but it does mean that Everton are going out and because of PSR and we've got around it, we are being able to keep Branthwaite. We was about able to hold on a bit longer for Onana to get the fee we want. It's been better for Everton. So I wish him the best of luck. It's a shame. He would have definitely got minutes at Everton this season, but he'll be a good player for you lot.
Yeah, I mean, Emery seems to like this type of player with regards to, we've almost got like three, I was saying this on one of our shows the other night, we've almost got three elements to how we sign players. So we either go for like the big name player, Onana, whoever it might be, and then we'll go for like the young players, so the 15, 16-year-olds that will sign up for sort of 500,000, 800,000, then maybe sell on for 10 million, whatever. Maybe even more, like that Kellyman who we sold to Chelsea. And then we've got this kind of middle level where it's 18 to 21-year-olds who have played first team football that maybe Emery likes because they've had that first team experience. They're almost like rough diamonds that he can polish up. You look at like a Morgan Rogers, like Villa fans were scratching their heads as to why are you signing this guy from Middlesbrough for 8 million, and then he comes in, he takes a few games, and then all of a sudden you just see this player just emerge, and he's like gets 3 goals in 3 Premier League games, and all he's probably worth about 25, 30 million now. You're seeing it with Dobbin, you're seeing it with this lad Nedeljkovic, this young lad from Serbia, I think, and then you've got Sam Illing Jr., who we've signed from Juventus. So you're seeing these kind of like rough diamonds that have got first team experience that might come through. And like you said, Lewis Dobbin might be one of those players. Now, whether he then plays and then goes on to Everton signing back this new star, I don't know, but it could well be. It could well be that he's going to be polished into a top level player at his time at Aston Villa.
Yeah, and it's only gonna benefit. It's only going to benefit Aston Villa, and obviously we'll want to do the same with Tim. Tim's come in. I think he played 6 or 7 times for you guys last season. He had a period at QPR the season before, or early this season.
Initially in that season, yeah.
And he's young, exciting. The ball can go into his feet. I understand he's a bit of a ball carrier, as you mentioned. He's got a goal in him. He's quite an exciting young player as well, and he's exactly what we need, really, for somebody in that 8 position to pick up the ball and run forward. We've missed it since, if I'm being honest, probably since we lost Ross Barkley. So he's definitely a player that can come in and do that, and he will get some minutes. Don't get me wrong, he will not play every game at Everton. Dyche isn't the way that he does that. He sets up with a very mature side, but he'll definitely get opportunities to stamp his authority on the game. And, I do hope that he can do a good job this season, because if it's this season's his bedding in season, Ghana guy is leaving next season. There's no heads or tails around that. That is happening. He will have to step in, and if that could be his moment to shine. So he's got 12 months to get it right and then get in the first team.
Yeah. Just before we talk about Philogene and one or two of the other Villa connections within that Everton team between the two sides, because there's so many. But you mentioned PSR and it pissing you off, because it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy, this whole thing about almost utilizing your academy players to come through your club to then sell, rather than them come through and be first team players in your own club. You sell them to use as accountancy on your balance sheet. It's just craziness. But one thing that the Onana deal has allowed you to do is to keep Jared Branthwaite and stop him from going to Manchester United. Now, if there's one thing that Aston Villa and Everton fans or clubs like to do is to piss off Man United, and that's got to be a good thing, mate. That's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it essentially categorically meant that Everton wouldn't have to sell one of the other assets that they've got to strengthen in this transfer window. Everton are going through a takeover, as you know, but the takeover may well conclude in September. So, we're not going to benefit from any funds. We're not going to benefit from the new stadium income, etc., until next season or January in the earliest case. So, in terms of Everton having the ability to go and strengthen this summer, we all know the story around Everton, PSR, points deductions, not having any money, all of this rubbish, loaning money off 777, all this rubbish. So the facts are that Onana leaving has allowed Everton to this evening, for example, put in a 20 million bid for Willie Gnonto, who has been a long-term target and a player that I'm very much excited to see Everton Football Club. It's allowing us to be clever in the transfer market without actually spending any money on the balance sheet. And Man United could still sign Branthwaite, but he's going to cost you £80 million, and that's how highly Everton rate him. That's how highly,
he's whether player. He's absolutely fantastic player.
He's playing. For any Man United fans that watch this podcast, and I'm going to love saying this because Sir Jim Radcliffe, I think, has managed to piss off most of the football league at this point in terms of some of his comments about, wanting a Wembley of the North and taxpayers paying for it and all of this stuff. The simple fact of the matter is, if you won't meet a player's valuation from a football team and you think you can lowball us, you can't, and that's the thing that's annoyed me. We're not a club that doesn't have any heritage or any backing. We're not a club that's just going to bend over and say, yes, Manchester United, take who you like. We're never going to do that. So when they're offering £35 million for Branthwaite, to be honest, it was an absolute joke that they offered that, and I'm so glad that Everton basically told them to jog on, because it's just unacceptable. And if they want Branthwaite, they're going to have to pay big, and if they pay big, they'll destroy the poor lad's career, because this is what they do. Players go into Manchester United, the Sanchos, the Pogbas, the Lukakus, anyone you can think of, and they just destroy them. They just destroy them because they've got this big, massive club ambition. And because they get 78,000 people there every week, they think, we're still a massive club. This team will struggle to finish in the top 6 next season, top 7. They're not a big club. They've got holes in the roof that pisses on all the fans. They've got no strategic model. And although this Jim Radcliffe is trying to change everything, he's putting really sour grapes on the whole situation at Manchester United. So anything that's gone against them, I love. I never used to have this sort of disdain for Manchester United, and I love a couple of the content creators like Saeed, for example. I've got all the time in the world for those guys, but some of the rubbish that I've heard from people like Mark Goldbridge and media and Sir Jim Radcliffe myself, I just don't bother. I just laugh at you. Honestly, I'd love to meet them in the street, stand them there, and just laugh. Just laugh.
It's the, like I said about the PSI, you don't want to see these young players that have come through, gone into the first team, and just be cherry picked for peanuts. Like you say, if a bid came in of 80 million, 90 million, then that's up to the player, fair dues, the club accept it. But when it's done because of the unfortunate situation that the club find themselves in, then I think that's where it's almost like a taken advantage of situation. That's where I think it's a little bit wrong.
It was the Villa situation that's annoyed me, if I'm being honest. I feel like I'm opening a can of worms on your channel, I'm sorry, but it's the Villa situation that's annoyed me, because you did really well last season. You finished in the top 4. It was exciting. I actually, based on the season, and I know you guys are absolutely buzzing to be top 4, fine, I get it. But I actually think you semi-underachieved, because I actually think that Villa side could have finished 3rd last season. However, it's one of them. It doesn't, it's one of them. It doesn't matter. But last year you played in the Europa Conference League. You weren't allowed. You weren't allowed to play against a team that was. Did you have to sell someone or something because there was a team that was owned by your owner?
Yes,
and you've got.
They had to diminish their shares in that club.
Right. Which Manchester United have got the same situation, and Manchester City have got the same situation this season in the Champions League, and neither of them have faced any ramifications. Aston Villa finished fourth in the Premier League, and are having to sell a player to appease PSR to teams like that were linked with players like Tottenham, like Liverpool, like Manchester United. Where Aston Villa are definitely in that crop of clubs, and probably, in my opinion, slightly better than all of them. So you sit there and you think, how is that fair? So we're all of that good work that Aston Villa and the owners and all of those great people behind the scenes have put into it are all getting diminished for PSR just to appease the top six that tried to leave us 4 years ago. Mate, I honestly have no time for the Premier League, and this is why Everton fans, as people might have laughed, and we went to grounds and then called us cheaters and all of that. This was why we made a stand, because fundamentally the Premier League is not fair. It's completely biased towards the top six, and it needs teams like Villa, like Everton, who are still big enough and have got the heritage of this country to go, actually, you're taking the piss now, because people do still listen to us. And that's what we need to remember. Clubs like Everton and Villa are still massively respected in this country, even though our commercial revenue isn't £500 million. So that was why Everton made that quite a big stand with PSR and booed the Premier League, because enough is enough of this bias shit that we see week in, week out, including VAR decisions.
Yeah. No, I agree. I absolutely agree. And like I say, the more that Villa and Newcastle, hopefully Everton and one or two other clubs keep gate crashing that top six and keep fending them off with regards to, the keeping players and finishing high up in the table. I'm sure that they'll come up with some rule to stop this. That kind of transfer situation. I'm sure they will. They'll find a way of stopping it to benefit those clubs. But while it's happening now, let's keep it going. But absolutely, I totally agree with you. Now, you mentioned you're looking to sign Willy Gnonto. So obviously in the market for an attacking wide player, I think he would be a really good signing. But one player I thought you guys were absolutely getting was Jadon Philogene, and I think it was towards the back end of last week he'd agreed the fee, everything looked like it'd been agreed, and then Ipswich came into the equation, and it looked like he was going to Ipswich, and then it was revealed that Villa had this matching clause, which we kind of knew, but I didn't really understand what the benefits would be to it, because he wanted first team football. Emery didn't seem to be wanting to give it to him towards the start of last season, so he went to Hull. So I was like, well, if Everton can almost guarantee him first team football, if Ipswich are going to guarantee him first team football, then he'd be likely to go there. But then it revealed that we had this 30% discount on it when we agreed this matching clause, and that the personal terms had already been agreed with Villa if that came through. And Emery wanted to sign him again, and I'd imagine has given him some reassurances, as you said, about his improvement and what he means to the first team. And now it looks like he's coming to Villa. So were you a little bit disappointed in the fact that he had a great season at Hull, very exciting player? Were you kind of excited to potentially see him at Everton, and disappointed that he's not going there in the end?
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one, because we were linked quite heavily with him over the weekend, the weekend before. And then on the Monday, it come out that Ipswich had agreed a deal with him, and he was essentially going there for a medical. Then it turned out that Everton had agreed the fee, and he was actually coming to Everton for a medical on the Tuesday. And then on the Wednesday morning, Villa have agreed a fee, and he's actually going to Villa for a medical. This is all whilst, by the way, his agent is going around all the training ground, and you would have saw the picture from. He was at Barcelona. He was at Barcelona. He come to Goodison. He was at ours. He was at It was at our training ground. So he literally was flaunting the fact that this guy was being sold to. Now, I don't know his agent, and I don't know how many players he looks after, but this could have been his big ticket move, essentially, because you know what agent fees like. They get about 20%. So this has probably made this guy a millionaire. So I semi-get it. But I think the big thing for me, and the frustration for me, was it was clearly a kid that either he wanted to definitely go back to Aston Villa, or he was just bidding for more money, because it appears that Ipswich made him an offer, which he agreed. Then Everton made him a slightly better offer, which he agreed. And then he's got this clause in Villa's contracts, and whether you guys have offered the same money as Everton or better or worse or whatever, but there's a fundamental reason why he's not going to Everton or Ipswich. He's going to Villa. It surprised me because he was sold from Villa. So
yeah,
something has obviously been said to him that says, look, we didn't want to get rid of you. We want you to play. You've got an exciting opportunity ahead of you. Does he play over certain players in your team? It looks like Diaby might be off, so he's definitely going to get minutes potentially. Champions League football is exciting. We all know that he wants to play for Barcelona because, let's be honest, he's not hid the facts. You know, his agent's not hid the fact, and Barcelona haven't said that they won't sign him. By the way, that, you know, they've said that they wanted him on loan, and Hull disagreed with that. So it's going to be an interesting period at Villa. Was I disappointed? Yes, because we'd also been linked with the Newcastle winger Minty, which was exciting because that involved Calvert-Lewin going to Newcastle. So it's been interesting. But look, Everton need a winger, at least one, if not two, in my opinion. And if you'd have offered me Willie Gnonto or Philogene, I still probably would have gone with Gnonto, only just because I've seen him in the Premier League. But it's only because I've seen him in the Premier League. I have no doubt that Philogene is going to be a top player. He's got bags of skill. And again, he's a player that I wish all the best, but I don't know if it's the right move for him at the minute. That's all.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think he's a really exciting player, and he was really impressive last season in the pre-season. You know, I know there's not a lot you can read into that, but he was really impressive, and we were very, very surprised as supporters when he was sold to Hull, and because we were like, he's gonna push for the first team, and that was before Leon Bailey, you know, had the season that he had. He was still kind of a bit inconsistent at that point in terms of Villa fans' minds. And obviously we'd signed Moussa Diaby as well. So, yeah, it could be that he's coming in to be the next in line to Bailey, and maybe Moussa Diaby goes. I'm still not 100% on whether Diaby goes or not, but it could well be. It could well be. But we need all the options we can get, and he's an English player within this Champions League ruling as well with the squad. So that kind of helps that at all. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do, because, you know, players who've played well in the Championship, we've seen it with the likes of Adam Wharton and one or two others. You know, the Championship's a tough league and a good league, and if you can score and play well and consistently well in the Championship, you can convert that to the Premier League. There's no doubt about it. So I'm excited. It's
the players that stand out in the Championship that tend to make good Premier League players. I mean, you mentioned Adam Wharton, but there's Michael Elise, there's Eze, there's James Maddison. There's another player at Norwich, Johnny Rowe, I think his name is. He looks a good player.
Yeah.
You know, there is exciting young players in that Championship that are being nurtured and fostered really well because they're playing good teams, because they're playing teams that fundamentally have come down from the Premier League with Premier League squads. They're playing those teams. Maybe it's a bit different this season because I thought all three teams that come up would go down and they were pants and all sorts. But usually, you know, there is an Ipswich, there is a Leicester in there, for example, who, you know, in my opinion, were a Premier League team when they went down. You know, there's a Leeds in there. Yeah. So they're playing against teams that have got pedigree of Premier League sides. You know, they've still got a very good West Brom team, which, you know, I know you guys might dislike me for saying that, but they've got a great manager at West Brom, and he does seem to do a decent job. So you sort of sit there and you think, it's not a bad time now to let these young players go and play in the Championship and experience it and go and score goals. And, you know, annoyingly, you know, Everton are seeing one of their prodigies doing it in Ellis Sims at Coventry, seems to be ripping up everything there. So, yeah, I think it's a good move for both Hull and Villa and Philogene. And again, it's another one that I wish the best, but it is what it is, mate. You know, who would you rather play for? Everton are probably fighting for 10th, or Aston Villa that are playing Champions League football? Because I know where I'd rather play.
Yeah, now you put it like that. Yeah. Now, it's been amazing chatting to you, mate. Amazing getting your insight. Before we finish up, just your thoughts on Everton for the season. What are your kind of hopes for you mentioned about, you know, kind of finishing in that 10th to 14th region. Yeah, what are your kind of thoughts in terms of this upcoming season for Everton, and your hopes?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a weird one really, because Everton defensively last season were fantastic. I think we finished either 4th or 5th in the league in terms of defensive stats, and then 2nd in terms of clean sheets. So Everton defensively are absolutely fine. It's going forward where we struggled last season, as it was abundantly obvious we couldn't score enough goals. If Everton can get a goal scorer, then you know, we could finish top 10, maybe somewhere like 8th or 9th, you know. But if we don't, then I think there's going to be a lot of 1-0, 1-1s, draws. We won't lose loads of games, so I think we finish about 12th or 13th. It's going to be a interesting season this season, because the teams that have come up from the Championship are better teams, and you know, you're seeing it with Ipswich at the minute, signing Greaves and Delap, who are both very good young players. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. And yeah, I'm more excited about Everton going forward than I have been for the last 3 years. You know, we've got a new stadium to walk into for next season. The stadium will be completed in December, January, so that's exciting. Sean Dyche, he's going to have a few months to either get it right or get it wrong with the players that he's signing. They're trying to change the brand of football. You know, they sign players like Ndai, who's a ball carrying player from Marseille who's fairly highly rated. You know, they're looking at Nonto, have signed Tim. They brought back Jack Harrison on loan, who's got that Premier League experience. So look, we're not in the Aston Villa ballpark. You know, we're not in the top 7 ballpark, but we might be one of the teams that sort of competes for the best of the rest. And based on where we were 2 years ago, where we had to beat Bournemouth on the last game of the season to stay up, I take that all day, mate, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. No, look, I actually think you probably want a weirdly boring season for Everton. Just there in that area.
No points deductions. Yes, you don't need under that.
No more dramas. Yeah. I've watched a lot of your passionate rants on your match reactions, mate. I just think, I don't know if your heart can take it.
Mate, honestly, the problem is, right, so I'm 32, but I look about 45. My heart, right, it pounds out my chest. And as you can clearly see, I'm a big boy, so I'm one rant away from a heart attack, most likely. But yeah, it's definitely going to be better. And just to chip in, if I can, Rich, about the Villa, it's a club that's very close to my heart. Obviously, I literally live 6 miles away or 7 miles away from the Villa, so I don't live far. I go there every season to watch Everton, and it was really disappointing when he was in the Championship because I couldn't. So, you know, I'm glad that you're back, and I'm glad you're doing so well. I was at the Carabao Cup game last season, which was, I mean, it was one of our best performances of the season. I know it was an off day for Villa, but it was a game that, you know, it was just a game, just a generic cup game for you guys. But it meant a lot to Everton because I think Villa were on this incredible home run at the time, and I think we were the first team to win at Villa Park last season, if I'm not mistaken. So, I think Villa are going to have another great season. I think they're signing players that are going to push the club forward. I think the signing, I think it's confirmed now, isn't it, Ross Barkley? I think that's a signing. Yeah. That's a signing that is it's a shrewd bit of business because he had a great season last season and he looked like the Barkley of old. So that sort of 6 to 8 playmaker, you've got that there as well. with Onana coming in, you've got that height and physicality, as you said. So it's definitely exciting. You've got, in my opinion, England's number 9 up front now. I mean, Harry Kane is by all intents purposes, in my opinion, finished. So Ollie Watkins should hold that mantle. And it's just about trying to be consistent again, doing well in this new format in the Champions League, which again I hope you do. And I hope you go for the top 4 again. I hope you have another good season. Don't be disappointed if you don't quite hit the top 4. These things can be a bit of a moving, revolving wheel. But you know, a European finish again next season, a decent one in the Champions League with maybe a trophy or a final, or a semi-final. Villa are going in the right direction, mate. So yeah, all the best to you guys as well.
Absolutely top man. I mean, we're just so excited to be, you know, in the Champions League with a manager that we've got. I mean, it is, and it just shows you the turnaround can be so quick. You know, we were under Steven Gerrard, we were in the relegation zone, and we're talking 18 months or so ago. We're not talking millions of years away. You know, it's incredible, the turnaround.
I actually work with, you know, loads of Villa fans, and literally I'll never forget the moment Emery come in. I genuinely said, you'll finish in the top 4 in 18 months. I actually called it. And the reason why I believe that is because it wasn't Gerrard. I felt like Smith was building a really decent side. And apart from the odd signing that he might have got wrong, you know, maybe hasn't worked out, you know, your Coutinho's of this world, for example, and players around there like that. Luca Dean maybe hasn't quite hit the heights that you might have expected, but he was building a team that was capable. And now you've got this team that is capable, and you've got the manager that sort of backs that up. I called it straight away. Honestly, I called it straight away. And actually, when you could have gone top at Christmas, mate, I was as disappointed as anyone about that Sheffield United game. Honestly, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, then like you say, you know, it could have been 4th place was amazing, and we did kind of run out of steam at the end of the season. You know, trying to maintain that Conference League run and the race for 4th. But yeah, I think had we been a bit more lucky with injuries, had a couple of other results gone our way around that Christmas time, we could have finished 3rd. But yeah, lots to be excited about for this season. And like I say, mate, a good season for Everton, I think, is on the cards. A good, solid season for Everton is on the cards. And yeah, good that Villa and Everton can do each other some little favours to make sure we keep our heads above water. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. If anyone hasn't heard of your channel, I don't know where they've been, but just give yourself a little shout out, mate.
Yeah, so yeah, guys, you'll find us on all social media platforms under the tag Blue Boys Network, and yeah, make sure you come over and subscribe to our channel, guys. Really appreciate the love and the support, and yeah, good luck for the season ahead, everyone.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Well, we will be back with the Fans Forum Tuesday night, and plenty more shows, transfer talk, rumour shows, and we've got pre-season starts on Wednesday for Villa at Walsall, so we'll be doing a little match reaction on that. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone for watching, and as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.